Well, welcome everyone. My name is Adam Cross. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Southern California, and thank you for tuning in today. We got some cool stuff to be talking about. We can talk about maybe how we met, kind of what we've been up to. But Colby, can you introduce yourself a bit?
Thanks, Adam, for having me here. I'm a graduate student in clinical mental health counseling at Divine Mercy University. I'm in my final months, so I'm wrapping up. I'm also a counseling and therapist trainee at a rape crisis center and domestic violence center here in California. So I've been working with the whole age range throughout the lifespan, healing from relational trauma, sexual trauma, but then also coming in from DMU, Divine Mercy, just looking how can we bring our Catholic identity into that. So definitely there's a lot there from my own personal story that kind of brought me to this point. And then I know we met through some mutual friends, and then when we moved to the area, then we connected, and then we've been on this journey of kind of sharing and reminiscing, and it's just been a great friendship and mentorship that you've provided as I've been kind of learning more and more about this whole journey of what it means to heal and grow on this journey.
Yeah, man. It's really a blessing to have friends that are going through the same process of education and gaining hours, and so that's always just like so nice to be able to talk shop and have somebody who's on the same level. And we have another friend, Josh, who's also going through DMU program and getting his hours. So that's been.
We got to get him on here.
Should we call him? No. Yeah, and it's so funny because I know we've talked about it too. Because your dad was my confirmation coordinator when I was going through confirmation, but we never met back then. But I went to a Steubenville conference with your dad, my first one, which was an amazing experience. So it's funny how Catholic circles are so small, but we met like 10 plus years later. Yeah, and then we've been surfing, and when we can. The last year's been busy, but yeah, we try to get out and go when we can, and that's been great. So, and that I think ties into what we're talking about today a bit, is just
it really does,
the physical. Yeah, quick side story that does relate, but this morning I got up and went to the gym. This will date this episode, but I was told that today's workout at 5:30 in the morning was going to be a pumpkin workout because tomorrow's Halloween. And I was like, okay, I'm new to this gym. Like, what's this going to be like? And I show up and all these people brought pumpkins and they're going to work out with their pumpkins. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And I'm like, this isn't going to be a great workout. Like, this is kind of weird. It's different. Like, we're used to the high intensity interval training in different stations. And I'm like, what are we going to do with pumpkins? I didn't bring a pumpkin. So I have a medicine ball and I'm working out with that, and it kicked my butt. Like, all these people are doing these exercises with pumpkins. I underestimated it. I was like, wow, that was so good. So like I'm not sore yet, but I think I will be. So I just
pumpkin beat you.
Yeah, thought I'd share. Did a pumpkin workout this morning.
Well, I did not do a pumpkin workout. I stretched near pumpkins. But yeah, the surfing too has just been such a way to drop into the body, drop into experience in like a whole new way. For me, I know that's been a mutual experience, and contending with the power of the sea is like, you can't mess with it, and you have to be in tune with everything around you. And if you want to play and have fun, then you've got to read the waves. You've got to read your body and position and be much more aware of your placement. That started to put me in a place, like a state of mind that I didn't even realize was happening until in hindsight. And I know we've talked about this, that it's just kind of happened where we're naturally just ebbing and flowing with the next swell coming in. And what that does for our minds and our relationships around us, our professional work, how that rubs off. I've gotten feedback on that, like, oh, do you do dance or do you do a martial art? And I just say, I've been surfing. They're like, yeah, I noticed something different.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I don't think I wasn't thinking we'd talk about surfing in regards to this topic today, but it makes so much sense. And I think it's good timing because I know we've been talking about embodiment for a bit now, like maybe a couple of years now, but just I'm taking a theology of the body course this semester, and so it's all coming together, just the inherent dignity of the body. We are not a soul with a body. or a body with a soul, that we are a fully unified body and soul. Our bodies have this inherent dignity and value, right? As God's creation, as beloved children of God, that we're called to care for our bodies, and that there's an integration that's needed, right? Like a right ordering of the body and how we look at it. And like something like surfing kind of puts that into perspective. Like even being out in California, it's cold. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get past that mental barrier of being cold in the water. And I won't go into what helps, but that really was kind of
trade.
Yeah, like an integration of like, okay, I have to get past this mental barrier of it's going to be cold, which is also mental, to then do something physical with my body. And now that we've been doing it so often and with wetsuits, it's just like I don't really think about it anymore, and I just jump in and I'm excited. And like you're saying, there's natural flow and rhythm to surfing and reading the ocean. And maybe more specifically, I know today we're talking about embodiment, and probably a good place to start is, what is that? Like, maybe that's not a word that we throw around very often, especially in Catholic circles, is, are you embodied? Are you like, so yeah, how do you view that or define that? Like, what is embodiment?
Well, I couldn't give you a dictionary definition right now, but I'll give you what my experience has been of that. And I would say embodiment means living more fully alive in the here and now. That also means my authentic self is showing up moment to moment. I'm in tune with reality. I'm in tune with myself. And we have to do that in the ocean while surfing. And I think there are certain places that cultivate embodiment more, that draw us into the present moment and engage us. And that probably looks differently for every individual person. What really gets you dialed into the moment? And I feel like that sense of being dialed in is a good way to put it for me. What about you? How have you gone about that word, that phrase?
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of that integration has stood out to me recently, and it's definitely the influence of St. John Paul II and learning more about theology of the body. But yeah, just this unity of body and spirit, and that we're not meant to be separated out, right? Like death is the separation of body and spirit. And so there's not supposed to be a separation or even a real huge distinction. And it interests me, you said that embodiment is being fully alive. And I think for a lot of people, that might be kind of like a stopping moment. It'd be like, wait, what? Like, how is being dialed in? Yeah, how does that correlate with being fully alive? And I think there's a lot there that we could like glaze over. So I'm wondering if you could explain that a little bit more. Like, how does being embodied help us to be fully alive as humans?
Yeah, so what does that mean to be fully alive? Yeah, at first glance, that can seem really foreign, and how do you put the two together? So kind of tracing my steps back to how did that process start for me in discovering this? And I think it wasn't just staying in my head, it was experiencing it. And I think that's what we're talking about here. Being fully alive means not just staying in my head, but actually being in touch with the people around me, my own self. And we could look at philosophy, theology to kind of give us different points of reference here. Each of them are very valuable. Theology of the body, John Paul II offering such a beautiful contribution to understanding how our bodies are prophetic and how we're spirited bodies and we're embodied souls is one way that we could also put it. That there's such this interlinking. In the Catholic Christian tradition, there's been that understanding and it's been more and more clarified, and we've seen that. And then interpersonal neurobiology has really helped us further validate what theology and philosophy has been telling us for thousands of years. And not just from a Judeo-Christian tradition, but other traditions as well have also been seeing that there's this truth to embodied experience, being fully alive through understanding our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, and how that interrelates, and being able to appreciate all the different processes inside of us.
As you were saying that, I was thinking of kind of a realization I had, I think, over the summer. I was taking a metaphysics course, and it just got me thinking about how nothing we experience, like visibly or with our senses, isn't embodied or corporal. And maybe that sounds like obvious, but it kind of hit me. I was like, well, words and thoughts are not like tangible. But then I started thinking, I was like, well, what's language? Language is vocal cords vibrating. Like we're making sounds. If somebody doesn't understand our language, what is that? And then we are subscribing and ascribing meaning to that. So just even thinking of language as like a very physical embodiment of something, it's like, whoa, right? And even with thoughts, we can think of like neurons firing, and we don't understand consciousness completely on a biological level, but there's everything we can perceive is physical. And then at the same time, our faith tells us that there is this seamless integration of body and soul, and that they're not meant to be apart, and that, our flesh rebels against the spirit, but we're called to have that primacy of spirit guiding our bodies and really animating our beings. But I think, and I know we've talked about this too, but especially for a lot of Catholics and in the context of healing, we can think that our bodies don't play a big part. Where it's like, well, if I think hard enough, or if I, go through my emotions mentally and verbally, that's what healing is. But I'm curious, kind of diving into how do we incorporate the body in mental, emotional healing, and so I know, you have a lot of input with school and, so and books, a lot of good books you're reading. So I know there's a wealth of information, but any kind of immediate thoughts on where to begin?
Oh man, as you were talking, I started thinking of scripture in St. Paul, how he'll say that, we've tried to understand this phenomenon for thousands of years. Aquinas touches on this, Augustine, people before Christianity. And then we've had the explosion of the psychological field as well to really give us some more particular understanding in that. But gosh, where am I going? There's so much here. I would say that, well, to get my thought back on the rails.
Yeah,
let's see.
I think how does the body fit into inner healing? I maybe is kind of that question.
That's right. Yeah. So this is where I wanted to go with this. So the field of trauma research and trauma-informed therapy has been really insightful for me in my own journey, as well as the clients that I work with, in giving some insight into how being more embodied in our world, in our day-to-day moving through life, can not only be fulfilling and something that's enjoyable, but is actually a process of healing. You were saying it earlier by this mystery that John Paul II touches on and the tradition of the church touches on, which is this reunification of body and soul, is this process of redemption. And so where do we fall along that path for ourselves and those that we encounter in counseling and therapy work on their journey of redemption? And I think it's right there where we're trying to help them integrate body and soul and mind as well as this overlapping subjective experience that we could really define as the mind, really this interlinking of soul and body. Because we see that there's the neurological architecture dynamics within the mind that are all kind of framed around the soul, who we are, our essence, and this inner indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And I would say that the body really comes into play so that we can access the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And that's where I've found almost a missing link for me in my own spiritual growth and my own journey as a human being.
You said that integration is redemption, and Christ enters into that death, real death, and the resurrection is this reintegration and redemption. It's like, whoa, that is huge. So anytime we're seeking to better integrate our body and our mind is right there, we're participating in that redemption. Is that right? Does that make sense?
That is making sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that
cool.
Resonates.
Yeah. I've never put the word redemption to that. But that's beautiful, like that healing, because ultimate healing is redemption, right? Ultimate healing is the beatific vision that we're made for, right? Face to face with God with no mediation in the middle, nothing separating us. Okay, so practically speaking, how do we integrate? Like, I think that's a good question. I know I've done a video on yoga, what does the Catholic Church teach about yoga? And that's a hot topic too. Is like sometimes people just hear the word yoga and they're like, no, what are you doing? And so we don't have to talk specifically about yoga if we don't want to, but practically, like how do we connect with the body? How do we integrate that in the healing process?
I think it looks different for every person, given their context, where they're coming from, what they're coming in with at the moment that we're seeing them. And of course, I'm speaking in the context of if they're coming to us for therapy. And then from my own experience, what does it mean to practically integrate?
Yeah.
Interpersonal neurobiology has really turned our lens and gaze towards how there's this interrelationship, this deep interlinking between our relationships, the brain, and our mind, and how each of those can affect the other interchangeably. And so when we change our perspective or our mindset on something, we literally can change the architecture of our brain. When we are around healthy relationships, people that support us, or people that are stressing us out, or we're depending on the relationships we're around, that has an effect on our mindset or the architecture of our brain. And what that means practically is, who do I have around me? Who am I intentionally placing in my life? Who am I seeking out? Because those people are going to have an effect on how present and engaged I am in those relationships and in my day to day. But then even individually, what kind of practices can I do? Can anyone do? That could look like exercise. Bodily movement has a way of really engaging all of the senses and the mind and the soul. And really what floats your boat, what really gets the gears turning for you, is kind of a process of experimentation. And for me, that looked like incorporating posture, breath into prayer. And that put me in a space where my body was disposed. And by using it's been beautiful to experiment with how different postures, by holding tension or relaxation in different muscle groups, focusing on the breath, can tune me into my inner experience, slow me down enough, and slow my anxious mind down to the slower rhythm of my body to then actually flow and listen to the subtle whisperings of the Holy Spirit, whether he's speaking very audibly, he's speaking through another person. But what I've found is that by practicing some form of posture, movement, and breath, I've been able to access myself in a deeper, more fuller way. And that's been something that's resonated with a lot of clients of mine who are healing from various kinds of complex trauma, wounds, and they're coming in trying to do something about it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful. And I like the emphasis on relationality too. It's like, how do we incorporate the body and healing? Well, any type of relationship is going to be in some respect physical. Like, how am I relating to people around me or just the world around me? So having good support makes a big difference, right? What kind of environment am I in? And even that reminder, like you're saying, of we can restructure the brain. Like, how much hope is there with that with, neuroplasticity, we can change how we think, we can change how we view the world, we can build hope, we can build joy, even in the face of trauma and suffering. And that's so important, I think, to come back to, is that we are able to grow and experience healing and relief and redemption, right? That even if we've been through tremendous trauma and hurt, there is that room to experience new life. Like, we're made for that. We're hardwired for that. We're adaptive. So that's really cool. And I think it's important to remember for everyone, like, we can kind of get stuck in things. The other thing I was thinking of, forget what you said, but it kind of clicked for me too, was just the idea of, with trauma, people often disassociate. So they're dissociating from their body. Sometimes during traumatic experiences, people feel like they have an out-of-body experience, like they are not their body, or like they're looking down on a scene. And that can be really a strong survival technique, to say, reality is so ugly right now, I'm not going to be in it. And to not be in it means I'm not going to be in my body fully. And then I think what we're talking about today is, what's the opposite of dissociating? It's to associate, but associating in a way that's safe, that is secure, that builds us up. And so I think that's a good point of reflection, is how can we associate with our bodies and with reality in a helpful way? How can we be in what is? And hearing you say that, it's so, like, it really depends on each person, which I think is a helpful reminder too, because it's not like, here's this one thing you should be doing and all your problems will be solved. It's like, God has made us completely unique in our personhood, and we have interests and desires and preferences, and there is a freedom and a dominion to say, okay, how do I enjoy associating with my body and being in the present moment? And, I know for me, going back to surfing and water, it's like, how can I get in water? Right? Like ask me to go run and I'm gonna hate it. But say, hey, go swim a couple miles, I'd be like, okay, sure. Like, that sounds great. So I think there's good news there too. It's what do you enjoy? Like, we're not trying to fight, like, oh, you have to do this with your body and, just push harder. It's like, no, like, actually listen to what's in your heart and what's on your mind about what sounds good. What about reality attracts you? Because creation is good, right? Our bodies are good. So how do we tap into that goodness and incorporate that? And I think, that's why we see within the field of psychology, so many things kind of pop up and it's like, oh, how is this a thing? Like art therapy or, play therapy or, music therapy. It's like at first glance, you're like, what does that mean? Right? But then when you get into it, it is an embodiment, right? Of, music or painting, or playing, like how to become childlike. We're just like, let's pick up some toys, or like, let's draw and let's get creative. And it's like a beautiful expression of that integration, I think.
Absolutely. I love that you bring up play, music, and art, because that's been something really meaningful for me personally, but then also for the work that I've engaged in. For my clients, I've noticed that non-dominant hand drawing has been really helpful for some clients. And just tuning into using your non-dominant hand, which is, you have to get over some inhibitions there and just see how you do, but just letting your non-dominant hand pick up some pencils, crayons, a paintbrush, and some paints. Some clients, they've engaged in this non-dominant hand drawing, and that's really helped them tune into a side of them that they weren't really aware of, that is much more embodied. And it's much more associated with the research is showing us the right hemisphere of the brain, which is much more associated with embodied experience and the moment-to-moment experience, felt sense of our life. And so that painting has been really helpful. For some music, listening to certain types of frequencies can really regulate some people's nervous system.
Yeah. Some screamo music or some static. ASMR. Yeah. There's so much out there, man. But that's really cool to hear. And even with the non-dominant hand drawing, I'm pretty ambidextrous, so I'd be curious how that works. Like I can draw, and maybe not as good with my right hand because I'm left-handed, but it's not that much different for me. So that'd be a rabbit hole to go down. But I've done that with having people write letters in therapy. So writing a letter with their non-dominant hand, sometimes like as a child self or child part of them, and seeing kind of like that lack of control, like it's not this fine mastery. It's just like I have to use fewer words because I can't write as well with that hand and I have to really focus on it. Yeah. And then so I've had clients do that, and then they kind of maybe respond with their other hand, their dominant hand, to that child part of them.
That's beautiful.
What do you want to say?
Wow, that has to be powerful.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And hearing the drawing, and what you're saying about kind of the sides of the brain, that's really cool to hear. That's all really good stuff. And I guess I had two other thoughts. Or maybe we could talk a little bit about yoga, but also in therapy sessions, in terms of connecting with the body, I find it so helpful with clients to really slow down. As a supervisor for other therapists, I feel like that's my word, or words. I'm always like, let's slow down into that. Let's slow, I gotta figure out new ways to say it because I'm a broken record, but like, let's slow down. Like in sessions with clients, it's really a matter of, well, what does slowing down mean? It means, can I associate with the body? Can I notice sensations? How is my body feeling? What is my body telling me or trying to tell me? With that in mind, what are some emotions that I'm feeling? Where is that held in the body or carried in the body? And what are the thoughts that go with that? And I think simply doing that as like a basic check-in, and I do that a lot with clients, is super powerful. Even if we didn't talk about anything else, it's like, let's slow down, let's breathe, like you're saying, maybe some progressive muscle relaxation, like where you might tense muscles and then relax them and breathe into that. But even if somebody came into session and said, I have so much anxiety, and we slow down into their body and say, let's notice your body. Okay, maybe you have a lot of tension in your stomach, or maybe a lot of tension in your shoulders, and you just feel like your shoulders are so heavy and weighed down. And then we say, okay, what's the emotion tied to that? Well, it's anxiety, it's pressure. Okay, where, what's behind that anxiety? What are some thoughts about your identity connected to that pressure on your shoulders and that anxiety? And maybe it's a sense of, well, I can't do it, right? Powerlessness, or I have to do everything, right? Feeling overwhelmed. And so spending time with that in session, again, it just starts with the physical. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to keep in mind, is that our bodies are communicating to us. There's a language of the body. Like you're saying with trauma, our bodies carry trauma and the effects of trauma. And so they sometimes they can scream at us and say, look at me, you have a headache for a reason. Can you stop? Can you slow down? Can you pay attention to what you need? So starting there, it can sound overly simple. And I know for some people who are really anxious, and I'm like this too, where it's easy to go. And then we say, oh, well, let's just stop and breathe. It's like, that sounds so unproductive. That sounds so not helpful. But the second I do it, or the second I'm doing that with clients, it's like, whoa, oh, wow. Like I feel so much better. Like it's a tangible difference, but it can feel unproductive. But starting there it's a game changer. I've had clients where we just slow down into the body, name the emotions, and we give the emotion and the sensation permission to be there. So you feel this weight on your chest and you're really sad, you're really depressed, and they'll just break down and cry. And I'm not doing anything. They're just noticing what is. They're associating in a safe place. And from that, with permission for that to be there and acceptance of that sadness, that depression, knowing where that is in their body, we can explore where that's coming from. And there's a lot you can do with that, right? Attachment wounds and exploring relationships and, reprocessing memories. But sometimes even if it's just like, I'm noticing my body and that feeling, so even if that's all we did in session, sometimes clients are like, I feel so relieved that we did that. And I'm thinking, I didn't do much. You just stopped and felt what was actually there, and that makes the world of a difference. So that's so great to just keep in mind with embodiment.
Absolutely.
Slow down, breathe,
yes.
Notice what's going on.
I just heard you describe this process of how being in a safe relationship can actually give someone what they need, that co-regulation to slow down. And I've been on the receiving end of that. And then I've been had the privilege of giving that to others as well, where knowing how to respect someone's free will, their context, their position in life, and just be with them, holding that space so that then they can drop into their body, drop into the emotional experience that maybe they're just circling around on the surface cognitively. Yeah. And then a simple invitation is often all they need. And I've found that sometimes either dropping into the body is really calming and regulating, or it at first is really dysregulating. And that's also just as important because, again, whatever's there is really important information for that person to understand what do they need and what is their body trying to tell them. As you were talking, I just thought of how many cultural assumptions we bring in, even religious assumptions that discredit the body, and how often we can be so hard on our bodies. We want to change our bodies. We want to manipulate our bodies. But this is a very different energy that you and I are talking about. We're allowing our bodies to be with us. We're allowing ourselves to be with our bodies. And in that, we're discovering parts of ourselves that we've not been connected to. And so we're reconnecting with ourselves. And I think it's important to also bring up that this process of dissociation is a survival technique. It's built into our nervous system to protect us. And so there is some important value there to respect. And even just having some mindfulness or some distance from a stressful event can be really good. But when that becomes chronic and our only way of living in the world, then it quickly can become avoiding experience and avoiding uncomfortable feelings. And that never turns out well, as we both know. Redemption is integration. And integration is redemption, is we're really leaning into here. Clinically, I've just been able to see that happen in front of my eyes as I invite someone just to focus in, checking in with their body. Hey, you're talking about this really horrible experience or this anxious event. You're worried about such and such. Let's check in with your body. Where do you feel that anxiety? And just slowing down.
I think something really big you mentioned, well, two things. It's easy as a therapist kind of be a fish in water, right? So I'm glad you brought up, it's like slowing down into your body. You have this foundation of a safe, secure relationship where it's okay to feel, and you actually have help to feel and guidance there. And so doing that on your own sometimes is really scary. So for me, it's like, oh yeah, the therapeutic relationship. That's so important to remember. This is a safe place that I'm kind of used to, But the other thing, which I think is really powerful, that you said, is redemption is being in our body, right? That integration of body and soul. And some people hate their bodies. And that's not uncommon, that we can be really critical of our bodies. And even just putting that in the context of that is because of trauma. That's because of woundedness, where either something physically happens to our body, and so we don't want to associate with it because there's shame and there's anger or hurt or fear, or we've even experienced criticism of our bodies, right? And that's internalized, and we criticize our own body. So there's this rejection of body. We don't want to be in it. Even how that relates to how we might, like you're saying, dissociate. You might turn to food. We could be focused on how good we feel when we're eating, compulsive, not really paying attention to our body, or addictive habits like that are going to get us kind of sucked up into our mind or escape in kind of this a fantasy of some sort, or just again, like euphoria for a time being, and we're less actually integrated with our body, not just in how we feel, but also in what it's made for, right? So this disintegration of body and soul is, I'm using my body in a way that God hasn't intended, right? And that's that's where sin it comes in this picture, is like, now I'm going against the design for my body. And that could probably be a whole nother podcast. But
oh yeah.
I'm wondering, Colby, do you have time to touch on yoga just briefly?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
But I know I've done another video on yoga, Catholic approach, and I know sometimes people even just see the word yoga and Catholic together and they're like, unacceptable. That's demonic.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's activating for many.
Yeah. And we're, to kind of, I think, preface it, we're not here saying, yes, please go do yoga. Like, no, there are fundamental concerns and differences with the origins of yoga and how other gods play into that, and what's going on. And so I think that's important to name in light of what we're talking about, because the body is sacred. The body has inherent dignity, as the full person does. And so engaging with the body, like you're saying, movement, postures, it can be so simple, but it can be really profound. And that can be incorporated into prayer and Catholic tradition. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, because I know that's a fine line.
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah. There's such a fine line. And not many people have really ventured into that Wild West, because Western traditions and Judeo-Christian, especially in the Roman Catholic Rite, has been so rationally focused. We've seen, let's say, Eastern traditions within the Catholic Church, the Byzantine Rite. They have a beautiful liturgy, and I would say it's very embodied. And so is the Roman Catholic Rite, but different expressions of the same truths there, and the same mysteries. And another thing just to mention off the bat is the church has always held that there's truth, goodness, and beauty everywhere. And that while the church holds the fullness of the truth, it is always looking to affirm where truth, goodness, and beauty lies in any human being, in any society and culture. And how beautifully affirming it is when we look at a completely different religious system or culture and see resonance between our Catholic faith and another culture merging in affirming that there's something sacred about the body. Eastern traditions have really practiced that for a long time in certain types of yoga. Now, it's important to also say that the yoga that we see and experience here in the US and in Western culture and countries now over the past 100 years is not the yogic tradition that has been practiced for thousands of years in other Eastern traditions. It has evolved to really something quite differently. And we don't need to get into kind of the complexity there, but from our Catholic faith, we can know that the body is good, and that embodied experience is part of our integration and healing. That's what we've been talking about. And noticing that yogic movements or certain kinds of posture can, through muscle tendons, framework and architecture, through our nervous system, we can bring ourselves into a more contemplative state, into a more calm and regulated state, so that then we can pray and be disposed to the voice of the Father in our life, speaking in us by the power of the Holy Spirit. So that has really been an experimentation process for me of using yoga positions through a Catholic lens. That integration of yoga postures with Catholic or Christian spirituality is, some people have explored that, but it's quite new, and something that from a psychological perspective makes a lot of sense to you and I. And it's resonated for me in my nervous system because it's allowed me to drop into my body, not dissociate as much, and calm my nervous system so that then I can be disposed to Lectio Divina, to praying the rosary. There's a beautiful prayer, the Jesus prayer, that is very popular within Byzantine Orthodox Christian circles. Just breathing in and then intentionally maybe holding a posture. There's been research done on a posture of openness like this is a stance of courage, whereas something more closed in like that is a posture of shame. And noticing how we can use our bodies to uplift our minds and souls to the Lord and to communion with ourselves and ourselves with the Lord in prayer is something beautiful, and something that I think is really left open to more exploration and work there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think, it's important to know and just know where we can integrate. And like you're saying, take some of these best practices, but with a fundamental difference in understanding of who God is and who we are. And so, we don't want to be doing yoga and focusing on these other gods like that. That's definitely, and like you're saying, modern yoga in the US is so different from maybe that original practice in most places. I'm almost kind of bummed that Catholics didn't get to name postures first, or at least popularly, because there can be such a stigma of like, ooh, that sounds like a yoga pose. It's like, well, I'm allowed to move my body in a certain way. And I've even heard people say, and again, we could talk more about this another time, but like, oh, if I do yoga, like that's where the devil can come in and possess me. Maybe a quick distinction is like, if we're inviting demons in, yes, right? If we're doing that in the context of yoga, yes. If we're stretching, if we're asking Jesus to come into our hearts, and if those poses might sometimes often be or also be used in yoga, I think it's good to keep in mind that Christ is king, right? God is our abundant Father who's protecting us, who's loving us. And that the devil also can't override our free will and say, oh, you want to invite Jesus in? Well, I'm stronger, right? And so I'm going to possess you through a yoga pose. And that might sound ridiculous, but I think sometimes we can give so much credence to the devil. And we forget that, no, God is the author of my body. God is the creator of every physical act. And the devil, is the father of lies, can distort it and say, no, I am. Like he's trying to claim dominion. But he doesn't have that. And so we can engage with our bodies and invite Christ into that, and with a confidence that this is good. Whatever we want to call a pose, right, or rename a pose or Christianize a pose, it's like God is the author of this, right? And I can invite him into it. And I think talking about this today, I think what's so key is it's not about like giving yoga hokey Christian Catholic names, right? Like postures. Like that feels kind of cringy to me, but going even further and slowing it down, right? Bringing the psychological into it and saying, okay, actually this is something deeper, right? This is something more sacred. God isn't in the wind. He's not in the fire, right? Like, it's that small voice. Can I slow down into my body? And maybe that's going to be moving my body in different ways, associating with it, and inviting God into that for healing and redemption, integration, intimacy. That I think is so much different from just like, go to a yoga studio. No, that's kind of missing the point. It's deeper, it's slower, it's actually more sacred than just like a simple workout,
I think what we're getting at here is it's the meaning that we imbue a posture, and that our bodies are our bodies, and a posture is a biological reality. We can bring a Christianized meaning and intention. It's the intention we bring to a practice. It's how we approach our bodies. That's what we're getting at here. And we can approach our bodies with more acceptance and openness and connection through different postures. And stretching can be one of those ways where we really slow down and intentionally focus our mind's attention. So we're using that muscle in our brain to focus our attention on a posture. But then as we stretch, we're expanding the muscle fibers. And as we do that, the neurons in our muscle tendons, in our joints, send messages in a feedback loop with our autonomic nervous system. And as we feel danger, or we sense a threat on a neurological level, or we sense that we're safe, our muscles are working in tandem with our nervous system. And so if our nervous system feels a threat, our muscles tighten up. If that happens chronically, our muscles can stay tightened, sending a message neurologically to the rest of the nervous system that we're still in a state of threat, which then our mind is working off of the underpinnings of our nervous system still remaining in this state of threat. And when we can stretch out and expand our muscles to relax and release that stored up tension, we can intervene into that feedback loop within our nervous system and send this message to the rest of our body and our mind that we're safe, that we're here, that this is okay. And so I think that's also really important to mention here, that it's the meaning that we bring into the posture or the position, because the posture in and of itself is good because it's part of us. It's our body moving and flowing in the world. And then it's the intention that we bring mindfully. This is a practice of connecting with ourself. We are made good and beautiful. We are good in the eyes of the Father. And to connect with ourself and connect with this temple of the Holy Spirit.
You just made neurobiology sound beautiful. And talk about integration, right? It's like neurobiology, what's happening in our bodies, in our nervous systems, and then connecting that with the spiritual reality of the gospel. It's like, wow, that is so cool. And you just did that very succinctly. That was like a great synthesis. So that was awesome. Wow. Like taking it from one to the other and just putting it together. So, well, I think that is a great place to wrap up. But yeah, any last comments or anything you want people to know, or even about you, if they wanted to get in touch with you or had more questions? Or
well, just thank you, Adam, for today and bringing me on and having this conversation more formally, where we get to record our usual banters back and forth. And I'm leaning into this field of psychology and counseling in the upcoming months. I don't have any professional platforms up at the moment. But
comments below, like I can get them to you as well. And yeah, that might be a good start. Is let question for Colby, post it in the comments section, and I'll send it over to him. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Adam, this has been great. Wonderful. Just talking on embodiment and getting just to flesh out these ideas more with you.
Yeah, seriously, thanks, man, for coming on. And I mean, we do nerd out about this stuff when we just hang out, and we've often said like, well, we might as well just hit record as we talk about it, and here we are. So
right, yeah.
Hopefully we can do it again, and we'll get Josh on here too to join in. That'll be good.
Yeah, come in here, Josh. Let's go.
I hope you watch this till the end, Josh.
Yeah, no skipping.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all for watching and listening today. And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave that in the comment section. Feel free to give this video a share if you think someone might benefit from it. And love to hear video suggestions if you have any topics or questions. I love being able to take that and make videos and bring people on like Colby, talk about these awesome things. So thanks again for watching, and love to hear video suggestions if you have any topics or questions. I love being able to take that and make videos and bring people on like Colby, talk about these awesome things. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless.